What mental condition has been parodied so hard that people forget it's a real disease? Narcolepsy. People don't understand it at all, and it's often the butt of a joke if it's there at all. There was a girl in my school years back who suffered from narcolepsy. The scariest incident was when she was walking up the concrete stairs, and then out of nowhere suddenly passed out. Luckily, I was behind her and was able to catch her and soften our fall, but to this day, I wonder every now and then, what would have happened if I weren't there? I was in the process of being diagnosed with a sleep disorder, narcolepsy being among the ones I was being tested for, and I vented to a friend about how many sleep studies I'd had to do in the last few months, and how exhausting and mentally draining the process was when you've been through 4 doctors trying to figure out what's wrong with you. One of them told me it said in my chart that I had depression, so maybe I was just depressed. I had waited the better part of a year to see him. This friend hears this and immediately brings up how she saw in her boyfriend's textbook that narcolepsy can make your hands go numb sometimes, so she guesses she has narcolepsy now. It took all my willpower not to strangle her. Nearly ed my grandmother more than once. Wasn't even the old joke she was effectively treated with. I think it was Adderall for decades, to the point that I didn't know she was on amphetamines and had it. Then when in the hospital for cancer, the doctors stopped her meds. After she slept for 3 days, the doctors advised us that she would never wake up and we should pull the plug. My mother was incandescent. After some intense browbeating, they pushed some amp into her and she woke up 10 minutes later. She recovered and had another good decade after that, followed by a few marginal years, fatigue, not pain, to spend with people she loved. On season 5 of RuPaul's Drag Race, Constant Jinx Monsoon actually had narcolepsy, which she was open about. But I was bothered by 2 things. One, the editing kind of seemed to play it as a joke. There were moments that she fell asleep on camera, and I was left wondering if there was a more respectful way they could have presented it. The way it was done felt a bit like an act of voyeurism and mockery. And 2, some of the other queens really lacked understanding and compassion for it, and we're either rude or cruel about it. Obviously, this isn't the fault of the producers, but it still sat really poorly with me. I would love to know how Jinx felt about how she was presented in that season. And I wonder if when she appeared on All Stars she was either medicated for it, or if she requested to not have any narcoleptic episodes in the final cut. Yeah, tons of people forget that it exists or think it's just some comical quirk. There was a kid in my high school who had a kinda strained home life. Both parents working in high-paying yet demanding fields, so they weren't often home. 2 younger siblings, one developmentally challenged, that he had to step up and help take care of. All the whole being a very good high school student, captain of the soccer team and on the baseball team. It was a small school, so just about all the teachers knew what stress he was under. So when he would fall asleep in class, most turn a blind eye. A few would even wrap a blanket around him. No biggie. He probably wasn't sleeping well at home, and he would always deny it. Fast forward a few years when I run into him. He's in med school and finally figured out he was narcoleptic. We both kinda chuckled since in hindsight it was so clear. Shame he didn't get identified sooner, but all's well that ends well. Wife has it, to way oversimplify, her brain more or less decides it's going to take a nap at some point in the day. Therefore, treatment is take a nap. If you plan on taking a nap, you don't end up taking an unplanned nap. Really, she can feel it coming and knows how and when to deal with it. It's kinda cool, because I always know we'll get a nap sometime in the afternoon. I don't have narcolepsy, I just like naps, and we're cuddlers. One aspect of it that I'm a little jealous of is that she skips straight to REM and always has crazy dreams. She also takes tons of crazy medications that make life complicated in other ways. It can get triggered by being understimulated. This was extremely dangerous as up until just recently she had an hour-long commute to from work a couple times a week. She had to drink a lot of caffeine and talk to her mom or me on the phone the whole time. She had 8 accommodations, but it was a joke. It's an invisible disability, so nobody takes it seriously or, like you said, understands it. Fortunately, she just got an awesome job that is completely remote. Needless to say, I always drive on road trips. What you said is exactly right. It's always a joke, like a cartoon character that randomly falls asleep. It freaks people out, and they basically just don't even try to understand it. Life is completely normal, and it's not nearly as dramatic as it is in the movies. It's easiest just to not bring it up with people. Me and couple friends found what we thought was a corpse. This guy was passed out at the bottom of a 20 set of stairs, was covered in about 2 of snow, and it was 15 C out. He wouldn't wake up but was alive and seemed uninjured and fine, but one of my friends checked his ID, and it was a guy that worked at Tim Hortons with him. We carried him back to our house and let him sleep on the couch, and he woke up scared and confused. We explained how we found him, and he said he was just finishing his night shift at Tim Hortons and walking home, but he has narcolepsy and he passed out while he was walking and just hit the ground there. I have been accused of having narcolepsy. I don't, just because I can sleep most any time and most anywhere. I have to defend the opposite of what you explained. I sleep well when I sleep. I'm not constantly tired. I don't randomly fall asleep. I just have the ability to quiet my brain and take a nap or go right to sleep at bedtime. I have been told that it's infuriating to others that I can do that. I guess it's my superpower. Oh, I average 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night. My mom has diagnosed OCD. I've seen her make and remake her bed sheets until she cried because she was doing it for so long. She has several other bodily health issues, so she is often very tired and generally fatigued. So making the bed this long not only made her extremely upset, but also physically sick after. She gets trapped for hours, sometimes fixing curtains, bed sheets, and folding clothes. Luckily, these episodes are rare and she does her damn best to manage her OCD, but once in a while it wins, resulting in drawn-out moments. I hate hearing people say they OCD. When you see what it does to someone, it's sad, and you never want people to casually claim to have it. Mine is pretty mild, and I saw the more severe forms with relief that at least I didn't have it that bad. Then my toilet wouldn't stop running in the middle of the night after I used it, and after picking everything up off the floor in case it overflowed, couldn't do about it at that moment. I suddenly got terrified that my cat had snuck in and would be in there all night in a flooding room if I closed the door. I checked the floor. I checked the bathtub. I checked the cabinet under the sink. I checked every pull-out drawer. I checked behind the blinds. I started to leave, then realized he could have snuck in behind me while I was checking the first time. So I did it again and again. The only thing that stopped me eventually was seeing him in another room when I left to take a breather. A marry you to people who say they're so OCD because they alphabetized their books. I recently got diagnosed with OCD, and it is nothing like there. Everything has to be neat and tidy. I checked the front door twice to make sure it has been locked. I have to call someone on a drive to work because the one time I didn't phone a friend, I got in a horrible car wreck. I don't make my cash drawer when I get to work, then something will happen to ruin my day completely. I wash my hands every time I stepped into a bathroom, even if it was to check my hair. My hands are cracked and so dry all the time. And yet I hate the feeling of lotion on my hands, so I have to wear rubber gloves at work. I count everything. Do you know how frustrating it is to have to count everything? Even your steps in your head when you do things like step out of your car and get into your house. The number is usually the same, but if I take an extra step one day, it is all I can think about. I hate counting everything, but my brain can't stop. I hate when people fake having OCD because it makes people think those who actually have it are faking it. I was surprised to come across this thread and this reply because I've been suffering from OCD for a long time now. I have contamination OCD. I take constant showers every day. I don't want to be touched, and I put down and pick up certain items and have to count in my head until it feels right, or else I fear something bad will happen. My mother got offended by me one time because she walked past me and I stepped back a bit so as to not touch me. My family tries to understand it but doesn't. I've been called crazy, and hell, there were even fights because of my mental illness, and I know it is irrational, but it's hard to control. The anxiety part of not completing a compulsion or ritual is the hardest. I feel physical symptoms even when I'm anxious. Stomach ache, headache, dissociation. It's ing with me physically now if I don't abide to the compulsion. My OCD has been getting worse, possibly with age or maybe even my antidepressants. This disease does not around, and it's not as light and funny as people may think. I might even go so far as to say it's ruining my life. It's hard for me to even go outside because of fear of germs and having to think I'm gonna have to go home and do my OCD again until I feel clean. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's an exhausting, time-consuming illness. Might even up your relationships too if it's that severe. If you want a realistic depiction that's not parodied, watch The Aviator. Never seen a film so accurate on it, and shows how scary it can get if you let the illness consume you entirely. Anxiety. There is the state of being anxious, and then there is generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. One is a normal state of being, the others are chronic, crippling mental disorders that create anxiety out of thin air. Having anxiety about something is not the same as having an anxiety disorder. It was shocking to me when my therapist said I had anxiety because I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't scared. I don't have panic attacks, but my body is a wreck. I'm constantly tense. I'm literally caving in on myself sometimes. I'm grinding my teeth. Anxiety isn't just thoughts but physical symptoms too. Never knew that until I went to therapy. People don't understand how exhausting it is to constantly be in a fight or flight mode because your brain overreacted to every little thing in your life. For me, doing small everyday things like my hair can completely throw me off the deep end. It's awful. My brain never stops and it never shuts up. I'm just always on edge and always seem to be anxious about something, even if that something is literally nothing. I can't sleep well. I'm always having headaches from being so stressed out all the time. I don't even know how to relax anymore. I'm just so wound up. I hate having GAD and yes, properly diagnosed by a professional, and I can't wait to get started on meds that actually work. It drives me crazy when people say, I have anxiety because they are anxious about a situation that is normal to have anxious feelings about, like a class presentation or going on a date, etc. I, as well as both of my siblings, have been diagnosed with GAD, and it's hell. It, along with the depression we also all share, keeps us from doing anything. I'm 18 and my siblings are 16 and 14, so school has been a big one. The school district hates us. We're on a first-name basis with the truancy officer. It was hell to get me a 504, and neither of my siblings even have one. Probably because nobody takes anxiety and depression seriously. The only reason I even got one was probably because of the other diagnoses I have. I'm so sick of people always asking me why I'm never at school and the school climbing down my poor mother's throat because of these mental illnesses all three of her children inherited by chance. It's gotten so bad for my youngest sister that she can't even go to school anymore. She has to do online homeschool. Knowing you're being up just makes the anxiety worse, rendering you even more incapable of getting basic tasks done. It's paralyzing and debilitating. It's such a slap in the face to see depression and anxiety being glorified by the media and my peers when they have single-handedly ate up my family and all of our dreams. And don't even get me started on PTSD. I can barely leave my house alone. My anxiety overwhelms me about every possible thing that could happen, from the mundane to the actual literal worst, and everything in between. When it's unavoidable, I can't eat. I can't stop crying. I have a very short temper, and then it transitions into a panic attack. I've literally begged my wife to take off work to come with me to doctor's appointments, and she has, but obviously, she can't always, and it's probably better she doesn't enable my using her as a crutch like that. Eventually, I do whatever I need to outside of my house, and come home and just crash. I thought scheduling things out way in advance would be better, but that just gave me more days to go through this cycle. I try to get mandatory appointments done as early in the day as I can stand and as close to the day I called as possible. Everything I can have delivered is. I haven't been inside of a physical store in. I can't even tell you how long. Anxiety and panic. I have panic disorder, but not generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorder is not what most people seem to think. It's not just anxiety that builds until it's crippling. In my case, I have attacks when there is virtually no anxiety. It's usually when I'm drifting off to sleep or doing something else unrelated to anything stressful. I will feel pain in my chest like someone has stepped on it. It feels like my heart is fluttering and I feel like I'm suffocating, but not short of breath. It's weird. Frankly, the fact that I'm relaxed makes it more threatening because if I'm not anxious in the moment, it sure seems like it must heart-related. The way my psychiatrist described it is best, IMO. He said it's like a misfire in your brain that sends your body into flight or fight mode, often in the absence of external stimuli. Mine seems to have come from repeated physical and emotional abuse from my mom. The constant vigilance sort of rewired my brain to have misfires of adrenaline. Regardless, panic disorder is not just panic and anxiety. It's actually a separate disorder that can exist in someone that doesn't have generalized anxiety disorder. I have generalized anxiety, and though this comment made me doubt myself, I thought it through and it makes perfect sense. I still don't believe I have it, as there tends to be a trigger, but I react infinitely more severely than your average Joe. I'm convinced these are just trauma responses and my body is trying to ensure survival at whatever cost. I got given antidepressants for GERD as anxiety may be worsening my symptoms. The antidepressant itself ate up my stomach on the first dose. I got all the side effects, and obviously I've been freaking out a little bit about it, but trying to contain it because it'll worsen my stomach. I would much rather continue with therapy and haven't touched the pills since. I feel like we almost have the opposite issue though. My daughter is an exceptional student. She's gifted and on an accelerated track. They're basically throwing things at her as fast as she can handle them. Lately, she's had a minor issue with a math class. For any normal kid, this would be you got a C. No big deal, but because she's getting such a compressed schedule, every hiccup is treated like a massive problem. So, of course, she complains to me about the pressure put on her to always absorb everything at an accelerated rate. She sometimes wakes up at 6 a.m. to start her homework because she can't sleep. So lately, people have suggested she might need medication to deal with her anxiety and that she might have an anxiety disorder. I have reminded at least 3 people in the past 7 days that the only anxiety she has is over a class that's a ton of work. Most adults couldn't pee for S's, and she's doing it while also carrying a full load of other gifted courses. She doesn't have an anxiety disorder. She has a lot of pressure that's giving her very real anxiety. That's a big one I dealt with. It's not as bad now though. I think the common misconception is that people with anxiety disorder have to be introverted and have to be bad at talking to people and stuff like that, which isn't the case at all. I personally am introverted, but you'd never guess it. Most of my days I like to keep to myself, but I can be the center of attention when I want to. I can go to parties and talk to girls and have a great time. Specifically, I am a musician and I absolutely don't deal with stage fright or anything like that. I am absolutely in my purest form when performing. It's amazing and it makes me feel whole. That doesn't mean I don't get massive bursts of anxiety and PTSD triggered by seemingly random things sometimes. I like the occasional party, but I hate large cramped groups of people and will avoid them at all costs. For a good while I would get constant anxiety attacks if I was away from my home past a certain time of night. Sometimes I couldn't speak. This was rough in high school doing marching band because I'd be at the football games fairly late, and my mind would sometimes randomly just begin screaming that I need to hide because there are too many people, too many eyes, and everyone hated me. Didn't help that it was a rough point in my life and I had absolutely no real friends. I used to be one of those people that didn't believe anxiety was all that real and that people should just it up until I went to a doctor after I began having these crazy bad trips. I call them out of thin air. I thought it was heart issues and he told me it's general anxiety disorder. I told him I didn't feel anxious though. He said it's normal for someone with a stressful upbringing or current life. It's strange how the kind works, man. I had this horrible GAD for about 6 months until it cooled down to the point I could drive without getting it. It caused me to faint at times when I had these attacks, so I stopped driving in the meantime. That was about 4 years ago and I'm much better now. I still feel it at times, but after moving out from the parents and living with my girlfriend, getting proper sleep, lifting weights, and eating better, I still get little moments once every couple weeks or so, but they last literally like only 10 minutes and don't linger afterwards for hours like they used to. Now I feel for anyone who has this problem. You feel so alone when you get these bad trips, because everyone around you tells you to just it up and don't be a, while you're sitting there with your body numb, ears deaf to anything other than low frequencies, blurry vision, and an abnormally high heart rate. Even my girlfriend thought I was faking it at one point for attention or something, until she noticed that my chest would turn red during the attacks, showing that there really was something physically going on, and it wasn't all in my head. It's literally a physical phenomenon that you can see. I never knew that the sinking and high pressure feeling you get in your chest actually turned your chest red along with it. Really cool and makes it more believable for the people around you who have troubles believing you. I went to a psychologist to get tested for ADHD. left with diagnoses for MD, BPD, partial PTSD, and generalized anxiety. My anxiety got very bad around 19. I refused to leave my house and continued this until about 4 months ago. I've been in dialectical behavioral therapy for well over a year now. It has changed my life. My anxiety manifested in a lot of ways. The most crippling for me were fear of bloating and pooping to the point I was medically underweight. If I look bloated, I still have a hard time leaving the house. I also couldn't shower or cook unless I cleaned it all spotlessly first. I was afraid of getting sick or getting an infection. I couldn't drive without a panic attack. I felt like I was going to die at every moment. Another is constantly feeling like I'm sick, which involved hours of Googling, calling my doctor, monitoring my bowel movements, food intake, sleep, inspecting my body, having a panic attack every time something felt a little off. I was an obsessive skin and hair picker too. I created a lot of scars and sat with tweezers and would pluck as many visible hairs as possible, in all areas other than my scalp. There is more, but that on top of my other mental illnesses was excruciating. I'm lucky to be here right now, to be honest. I lost every single person in my life except for my parents at this time. I'm doing much better now. Many of my BPD and anxiety symptoms are in remission because of copious therapy. I'm also on medications now and practice meditation, and I exercise 5-6 days a week, which helps. I hate to hear anxiety being thrown around. It's no joke. My mom's severely schizophrenic. Not one of the milder forms, one of the really serious ones. Without getting too much into it, I basically wasn't allowed to have a childhood because otherwise they would get me. I was largely homeschooled. All my friends were viewed with suspicion. I couldn't date. I wasn't even allowed to get a driver's license before I turned 18. I'm also a bilingual guy. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So as you can imagine, all those struggles with social stigma on top of dealing with my mom's issues left me with quite a bit on my plate. I struggle a lot with anxiety and depression, and in darker moments I'd thought of ending it all. All that in mind, there's a part of me that's furious that I was effectively her prisoner as a child, but at the same time I know that it's not really fair to blame her. It's not like she chose to be this mentally ill. In her own way, she's a victim too. I guess part of my problem is I don't have a good way to articulate my anger with what she did without sounding like I think schizophrenic people are monsters. I've seen how a lot of people talk about people like me, and I know how that makes me feel, so I recognize that I need a way to acknowledge my anger without demonizing struggling people, and I don't know a good way to do that. All that in mind, I completely agree with you on this. People like my mom should not be reduced to a punchline.